If you've noticed, we have no music tonight. Pastor Justin has asked for a night off because he's down in his hometown of, I think it's Mobile, and so he'll be back next week. And he told me not to let Pastor Zach sing, so we're not going to do that. But if you're here tonight for the very first time, would you raise your hand for us? We have a couple right over here, and I just met them. They're from Chattanooga, and we want to welcome them tonight. They listen on the broadcast on every week, and so we're thankful that they're here tonight. Someone else, first time. We want to welcome you also. Let's give her a hand tonight. All right. So without any music, I'm sorry that we don't have any worship music, but let's go right into In the News tonight. One of the most popular things we do is In the News, and I'm going to tell you about this that happened this week. A powerful 7.7 quake hit the Caribbean and leads to evacuation even of Miami, and some tsunamis were warning. The earthquake near Jamaica has been the strongest recorded by Cuban instruments and was felt across the country. Vladimir Monroe of the National Center of Seismology Investigation of Santiago de Cato told ABC News. He said it was felt in some parts of Havana and Old Havana. There's the epicenter of it. You'll see over to the right, that's Cuba. And so you can see Florida up there by that one dark point. So Miami also was affected by it. And there was a lot of reports about a tsunami that was coming, 3 to 4 foot waves. It had no damage, but basically the Miami-Dade County had one of the buildings that's going to be evacuated as a precaution. And that building was going to be one of the ones that was going to house a lot of the Super Bowl players. So they were really kind of worried about what was going on there. Again, I want to let you know that this is not just something small. 7.7 quake is fairly large. That's one of the sinkholes that came from it. But I did something else for you. I gave you a seismic monitor. This is as of today. The larger red spots are the larger quakes that have happened. So if you look at it, this is the Ring of Fire, so you understand what's going on here. This is the Ring of Fire right here. From Chile, goes up to Mexico, to Baja, to California, up to the Alaska, the Aleutian Islands, all the way down around Hong Kong, Japan, and down by New Zealand and Australia. That is a seam. It's a subduction zone. It's a seam, and it's active. The middle of that is Hawaii, which, by the way, was a volcano at one time, still has one, and that's why that popped up. But this is the area that we're supposed to look at, and this is increasing. When Christ said that in the last days earthquakes will be increased, there'll be an increase in we are actually seeing that. Not only the increasing in number, but they're increasing in size. Just to let you know, look at these large ones. There's a large one off of Chile. There's that one that just hit. That's a 7.7. Look at some of these that are over here. Look at this one that hit in Iran. And so we're watching. This is just this week. And so I don't usually bring you the seismic monitor, but I thought I'd let you know that I'm just not reporting just one earthquake. We're talking about something that's fitting in to Matthew chapter 24. So let me tell you a little bit more about something that's in the news. This is about the outbreak in China of the coronavirus. Several articles, and they're going to progress as the news came, so I can show you how this is kind of transforming as it's going. What to know about the viral outbreak in China? It says the Associated Press, health authorities are closely watching the outbreak of respiratory illness caused by a new virus that originated in China. The viral illness has prompted Chinese authorities to effectively shut down at least 3 cities and governments, and stepping up to surveillance of airline passengers from central China to try to control the outbreak. It says the scientists have identified the new coronavirus. By the way, the name comes from, when you look under a microscope, it looks like a little crown. The corona family have many types of viruses that affect people. Some cause the common cold, while others originated in bats, camels, and other animals have evolved into more severe illnesses such as SARS, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome, or MERS, the Middle East respiratory syndrome. So we know that in China and many places in the Far East that they eat raw animals. SARS came from raw animals. So the suspicion was that this is related to it, so it came from eating these uncooked animals. I was telling the study last night that a pig and a bear are related. They're in the same family, and so you can get trichinosis from both of those. But if a bear actually has trichinosis, or a pig, and you heat that, you cook it, or you freeze it, it kills that virus. So when you eat something that's raw, a raw wild animal, you can get this virus. It can go from one to another. Now we know that SARS was that way, so they had suspected that the coronavirus was the same way. And of course, Wuhan is where it broke out in China, and they said that the people in the seafood area, that's where it first came from. So I had some suspicions. I told it last night about some suspicions from that, because China lies through its teeth, if it has teeth, and they're lying about the numbers also. So I'm going to give you a couple more just relative reports on it. So how widespread is it? Well, China initially said 2 days ago that 500 cases and 17 deaths, which was a huge lie. The symptoms, they said, which is true, the common symptoms include a runny nose, headache, cough and fever, shortness of breath, chills, body aches, and associated with more dangerous kinds of coronavirus. In serious cases, the virus can cause pneumonia. And so if you know anything about viral infections, like the flu, no one dies from the flu. They die from pneumonia-related causes from the flu. It's the same thing with this coronavirus, but it's extremely deadly. Many coronaviruses can spread through coughing or sneezing or by touching an infected person. Scientists believe the new virus can spread from person to person in close contact through the respiratory tract. And by the way, not to gross you out, but if someone sneezes and they have a virus, that's going to hit at least 6 to 7 feet away from them. And so if you're in that proximity, you can actually get it. So could it be as bad as SARS? Well, they're saying no, but the truth is it's worse than SARS. This is the next article that comes out, and this talks about the quarantining. China quarantines 40 million. Actually, that's 60 million right now. 1,300 plus infected, and I'm going to tell you that number's not right either. Experts predict coronavirus pandemic could kill 65 million people, and the U.S. evacuation underway in China. So here's what happened. We had shut down an embassy. Wuhan has 11 million people in it. They've shut down almost every business in Wuhan. They are under quarantine. They have closed the gates to the city, and now they're doing it to other cities that are there also. Of our 1,000 employees that have worked for our embassy, they've already shipped 280 home on a plane, and my question is, I haven't heard anything about it, they landed in California. I would think and hope that they are being quarantined. We're not sure that they are. I haven't heard a thing about it. So here's some more of the real story. The next article, it says this. Media lies about the coronavirus outbreak. Ever since the coronavirus outbreak first began, the mainstream media has been feeding us fake news over and over again. Initially, we were repeatedly told that there was very little to be concerned about because it was very unlikely the human-to-human transmission was happening. But now we know that this virus spreads very, very easily between people. Another thing that we were repeatedly told by the mainstream media was that a victim had to start showing symptoms before they could spread the disease. Unfortunately, that's not true. You can have the disease up to 2 weeks before without showing any symptoms. Now, once they shut down the cities, thousands of people had already left there, so they have already seeded themselves into the world. It goes on, it says, Chinese officials have confirmed that even those showing no symptoms at all now can spread the disease. They finally came out and said it. But perhaps the biggest fraud of all has been the official numbers that the Chinese government has been putting out. According to the latest count, there are now 2,051 confirmed cases, and the death toll has risen to 56. But at this point, it has become clear that those numbers are completely divorced from reality. Over the past several days, thousands upon thousands of very sick people have been absolutely overwhelming the hospitals in Wuhan. They can't even treat them. Some of them are staying in line for 2 and 3 and 4 days, and they can't treat them. Many of them are going untreated. Sadly, the truth is that there are hordes of very sick people in Wuhan that are not showing up in the official numbers because there are not enough medical personnel to test them all. And many of the medical personnel that are working endless hours to fight this outbreak end up getting the virus themselves, like the 62-year-old Li Mudong, who died from the virus because he was infected with it. In addition to not being able to test everyone that's sick, the Chinese have also been purposely suppressing the death toll by falsely categorizing the deaths of many of the victims. So what they're saying, and it's kind of a half-truth, they're saying they died of pneumonia. Well, they did die of pneumonia, but it was directly caused by the coronavirus, and they're not putting them in the death count. Instead, it recorded severe pneumonia in many of them. So what would the real numbers look like if we were to being told the truth? Well, we don't really know, but experts at Lancaster University believe that there may already be 11,000 people infected in Wuhan. Let me remind you, that was at the beginning of this week. And there are only 1 in 20 infections have come for medical attention. The experts calculated the number could grow up to 190,000 by February 4th. That's only a couple days away. But a video that claims to be from a nurse in Wuhan claims that things are even worse than that. According to her, there are already 90,000 cases of the coronavirus in China, far more than the figure of just 1,975 issued by the government of China. It's important to note that you can't confirm what she said, but yet she has said it. This is a game changer, said Dr. William Schaefer, a longtime advisor of the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. He says it's completely contrary to what we were already told previously. And we were also previously told that the incubation period was a week or less, but now we're being told that the incubation period can last for as long as 14 days. That means that there could be thousands upon thousands of people that aren't exhibiting any symptoms right now, but they're spreading this virus around like wildfire all over the globe. Chinese officials are assuring us they have everything under control. I don't believe that. It also says this, but this isn't going to stop the spread of the virus. Millions of people left Wuhan before that city was quarantined. About 5 million residents had already left Wuhan. 5 million who could have had that virus. Not all of them have the virus, but 5 million who could have been carrying it. It says this extremely deadly coronavirus, wherever it originated, come from, is now out of the bag. So last night I said this. I said there is a facility that's, I think, 11 miles away from the center city of Wuhan that is a chemical warfare city, or chemical warfare facility. So they actually have chemical warfares, and they also have chemical agents and biological agents. So I said there's a rumor going on that this was a weaponized virus, a virus that the Chinese officials wanted to be able to take and weaponize it, put it in some type of weapon and spread it and kill people when they get into any type of warfare. Well, today it came out that they isolated the genome, and in fact it didn't come from that fish market, it came from that factory. And so it was something. Now, it may have escaped accidentally. That happens all the time. It could have been one of the workers that was there that could have gone to the fish market and spread it there. So this is something the Chinese officials tried to really kind of put under, but they've already tested this virus, and they know that it was probably mechanically induced by men creating the virus out of the SARS virus. So it didn't come from eating the raw animals like the SARS did. So it definitely did come from there. So that's even scarier when you think of that. I mean, why in the world would they be working on viruses like that can wipe out millions and millions of people, and now it's escaped? So I was thinking a little bit more prophetically, and most people won't tell you this. This could be a plague, but it also could be a judgment. Let me tell you why. China is one of the largest nations that persecutes Christians on the planet. And I've told this to people all the time. God always has final say. He may not do it today, he may not do it tomorrow, but God will take care of things. Somebody say amen. So it's very interesting when we think of the last days and think of prophecy to think of what's going on there. Let me tell you about Israel, the big news in Israel. So the big news is about the peace plan. It says Netanyahu White House peace plan, an opportunity that cannot be missed. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Saturday that the Trump administration's much-awaited peace plan was a historic moment and an opportunity that should not be missed. He went on to say this, today we have in the White House the greatest friend that Israel has ever had. That's the Prime Minister of Israel saying that. Therefore, we have the greatest opportunity that we have ever had. Now, it goes on to talk about Washington and the United States' relationship with Israel, which is very strong. And then this article came out also. It says, why Jordan won't impede the U.S. peace plan. So here's predominantly what the peace plan is saying. The peace plan is trying to give East Jerusalem as a capital to the Palestinians. Now, that may sound like that's a concession. It's really not. If you go to Israel and you go to Jerusalem, Jerusalem is divided into 4 parts. There is the Armenian quarter, where Armenian Christians are. There is the Jewish quarter, where the Jews are. There is the Muslim quarter, which is East Jerusalem. And there is I left one out. Christian quarter, yes, thank you. So there's the Christian quarter that's on the other side. Now, that doesn't mean that they all stay in those areas. They intermingle. They work among each other. It's not like CNN tells you. They're very, very friendly to each other. But they predominantly have their base of operations in those spots. So what we're talking about, what the peace plan is talking about, is giving the Palestinians the right to say that East Jerusalem is their capital, which, by the way, it's not necessarily anything really big to even say that. They're also wanting to give them $50 billion to rebuild their infrastructure in Gaza and to build up their citizens. Their citizens right now are 70% unemployment. They are starving to death. Hamas and the Palestinian Authority have taken over, and they're their leadership in Gaza. Let me give you a little bit of the scenario. So Hamas came in years ago, and they had elections, but Hamas came in and they were humanitarian. They were passing out food. They were passing out clothes. And everybody loved Hamas, even though Hamas is a terrorist group that has vowed to push Israel into the sea. So they won the people over. Then once Hamas came into power, basically they stopped doing that. They stopped allowing anything to happen in any type of correspondence with Israel. An example is if you got sick, and there's many, many examples here. I read of one man, he got sick. He could have gone to Israel over the border or through the checkpoint. He could have gone to Israel. Israel was willing to help him. There was a plea from his family to do that, but Hamas would not let him get any type of help from Israel because they don't want to recognize Israel. Then you have Muhammad Abbas, who is the leader of Hamas and the leader of the Palestinian Authority, and he is making billions of dollars. Both of his sons are billionaires. They are living in massive mansions. They have them all over the world, and he's 85 years old. He's not willing to give up his power. So he has said he rejects the plan right off the bat. Why? Because he'd be thrown out of office. The people in in Gaza are actually up in arms with the Hamas and Fatah and Islamic Jihad because they're dying, they're starving. Their policy has not worked. In 1947, when the UN petitioned then Israel, they divided out, they offered the Palestinians their own homeland. They offered them Palestine. They offered them the Gaza Strip. They rejected it. The Palestinians rejected it. What they're wanting right now, they rejected back in 1947 and immediately start going to war with Israel to get not only their area, but all of Israel. In the subsequent wars they've had, they have lost land. Every time they've gone to war, they've lost land. So it hasn't worked. So what they're offering now, what Trump is offering now is the exact same thing. We're going to give you your land. You can have that. And we'll pour money into you to build up your infrastructure and put jobs in there. And they're saying no. And the reason why they're saying no is not because the people are saying no. Let me tell you how smart this move is by Trump. It's so smart because now the people know that someone out there is going to give them $50 billion. So if they were inciting any type of riot before, they're really going to incite one now because they realize it's being withheld from them. So the Palestinians could benefit so much from peace with Israel. And let me tell you, this article says this is another one that comes on. And I'm not reading your articles because I'm paraphrasing what they're already saying and giving you a little bit more knowledge of it. So what it says here in this article is that Jordan's on board with it. So is Egypt. That's interesting to me because the Bible talks about in Ezekiel 38 and 39 talks about Egypt being the friend of Israel. And it talks about being actually helping God's people. Well, Egypt's saying we'll do that. We're all for this. Jordan, which is pretty much westernized, King Abdullah, he's saying yes, we want to have that. He didn't even balk when we made Jerusalem the capital of Israel because the Jordanians actually have a control of the Temple Mount, and so it's kind of a status quo. But he never balked, and so he knows that Trump is doing something for Israel, but he's okay with that. What Trump is trying to do, and it's smart, is to put a border area around Israel, so a buffer zone. Would it be Jordan? So because Iran's past Jordan to the east, Jordan, you would have Egypt. Saudi Arabia is already on board, so he has a border around Israel, and that is something that he is working on. That's something that this peace plan goes hand in hand with. So somebody asked me a couple things. They said, "Do you think this peace plan is going to work?" The answer is no, it's not. The Palestinians are not going to want it. They're not going to do it. And somebody else is saying, I just was hearing some prophecy expert, I love that, saying that this is the 7-year peace plan that the Antichrist is going to sign, and the Antichrist is bringing up, and that Israel will sign, and that will be gone against in 3.5 years. Well, the truth is, if this was the 7-year peace plan, that means that Trump is the Antichrist. And let me tell you something, he is not the Antichrist. In spite of what the Democrats say, he's not the Antichrist. And so this may be the groundwork, though, for a peace plan to come. We're very close to some type of peace plan. There are more concessions that are being done. The more this is being ruminated and talked about, the more you're going to get to that eventual peace plan. So it's another clue to me, as I see prophecy and as I read scripture, that is getting to the next level and the next step. So watch it because you're going to see it going on. Let me tell you a little bit about economy. I've told you about the negative interest curve, the negative yield curve, and I told you about the economy, but this came out this week, and it says this. It's not a pretty picture. It says, not ready. Most Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency expense. We better hope the U.S. economy holds together in 2020 because if there's any sort of major economic crisis, much of the country is going to be broke almost immediately. Let me tell you a little scenario and just throw it in while I'm thinking about it. So Wuhan has been shut down. Let me put that coronavirus into the economy. It's been shut down. That means every one of their stores you don't go to. All of their businesses are closed down. We're talking about 11 million people. It's already put a dent into the economy of China as China continues to shut down. They actually have quarantined 50 million people. It's the largest ever on the planet. So their economy is starting to slow down quite a bit. It's getting hit. It's a dark spot is what it's called in our economic news. And it's affecting Wall Street also. Wall Street reacts to news. So far, it's been very, very bullish because whether you know it or not, whether people want to admit it or not, they trust Trump. So everything Trump has done has been bolstering Wall Street. We're in a bull market. But basically, they're also looking at world news. If China's economy drops, it's a huge economy. It'll have a ripple effect around the globe, and it will affect American economy, not because we have a bad economy, but just because of the ripple effect it'll have. So we're watching something happen economically that could actually, with this coronavirus, that could actually affect everyone in the world. So let me read this article. It says, today, close to half of all Americans are living on the edge financially. For many, it's out of necessity, but for others, it's a conscious choice. Way too many people out there see no need to build up a substantial financial cushion because they have a tremendous amount of faith in the system. And yes, our economy is doing well, but it's not just based on our economy. They don't think that things will ever get too bad in this country, and so there's no urgency to put funds away for a rainy day. Americans, for the most part, are really people who react after a problem. We really react after a problem. We don't ever think in advance. It's almost like we don't plan for the advance. Proof of that is the American debt. People have I said this a long time ago, I'll tell you again. There's something called the multiple propensity to save and the multiple propensity to consume. Don't ask me to repeat that. And basically, the multiple propensity to save, back in the 70s, for every dollar you earned, you would actually save 20 cents. That's what people did, the average American. But today, for every dollar someone earns, they're actually spending $1.57. So not only are they not saving, they're overspending. So credit is the thing that's really starting to hit us. And there's a lot of people that have some runaway credit bills on their credit cards. And I've told this yesterday, I'll tell it again, I probably said it before this. A credit card company loves for you to take their credit card. What they're banking on is that you will not pay that balance off in a month. Because if you don't pay it off in a month, you're going to get 18, 19, and 20% interest. Now that's horrific when you think about the amount of interest they're giving you in a savings account, which is less than 1%. So credit card companies want to be banks. And believe me, they're making an awful lot of money on people. Now, the best way to use a credit card is you use it and you pay it off at the end of the month so you don't incur any interest. If you're not doing that, you are being sold out to a bank. That's what that is doing. And so I can't tell you how many people are in debt that way, and they live from credit card to, well, they live off their credit cards. I know some people who are buying food, groceries off their credit card. If you buy groceries off your credit card, and if this hits somebody, please don't throw an apple at me or a tomato. That's the worst thing you can do. To buy a non-durable good on credit is really a bad thing. Now, why do they do it? Some people have to do that out of necessity because they don't have the finances. The American dream is pretty much gone, and hopefully it'll be pulled back up, but they do it out of necessity. So this article, as well as myself, says this. The first thing you do is you get out of debt. You have to get out of debt. You have to get to a point where you can put some savings away. No matter how measly that savings may be, you have to get to that point. Otherwise, you can be caught. 47% of Americans cannot afford, this article says, a $1,000 debt that they didn't see. Something that comes up, 47%. It'll actually send them to a spot of having to go deeper in debt, or some of them, if they have businesses, go even bankrupt. So that's pretty sad. That's never happened that way before. All right, let me give you the other article that came out about the virus that I was telling you. So the virus spread exposes fragility of global markets. And there's only one thing I want to actually read out of this. It's talking about Bloomberg macro strategist Mark Cudmore. He detailed the fact that these markets are starting to be driven by a narrative. All our markets are driven by a narrative, as I said. So as the virus spreads and as they shut down one shop after another, one city after another, it also has a domino effect. And he called it something, and it's been called this for a while, and I haven't heard it in a long time, but he's talking about the key reason why this catalyst will matter, where geopolitical scares such as the Middle East conflict of North Korea and missile tests do not, is that it's front and center with the retailer investor. So the shutdown of major parts of the Chinese economy, and China is already mulling to extend the Lunar New Year holiday to prevent the spread of the virus. Well, in other words, keep people off of work. While restaurants and other public spaces are closed, transportation is blocked, and public events are canceled. At a normally prime consumption period will not only hurt domestic growth, but knock-on impact will be felt globally. So it talks about the signs of classic risk aversion were already evident in the markets on Friday. After more cases were reported in the U.S., stocks gave in, and havens such as treasuries, gold, and the yen are suddenly in a position for potential breakouts. Gold has had its second highest close in more than 6 years. Why? Because it's an inverse proportion. When stocks go down, precious metals go up. When precious metals when stocks go up, precious metals usually go down. So gold is an indicator. The stocks are an indicator. Something's going on. There's a pessimism. It's actually called a V-shaped curve. It's sudden and people don't see it coming. So we need to watch. We need to watch what's going on. Again, the caveat here is if you're in debt, and I know it's an easy thing to say, work on getting out of debt. Take those big credit cards that you have balances on, the ones with the most percent interest per year, and work those off first. And don't use another credit card to do it. I know that sounds silly, but people do it all the time. That's how people try to get out of debt. You're only getting further in debt. Let me give you a little bit about religion, what's happening there. So, Christian killing fields ignored by Western media. Jesus said the love of many will be waxed cold towards the end of the days in Matthew 24. He also said that you'll be persecuted in the last days. Now in America, we're seeing some persecution come through the laws and come through the liberal left. But in the world, there is massive persecution going on Christians, and no one's talking about it. And so this article is pretty in your face, but it's really relative, and I want to read a lot of it. I don't usually read a lot of it in the news, but I want to read it for you. It says, first there was the beheading of 11 Nigerian Christians during the recent Christmas celebration. The next day, a Christian woman, Martha Bullis, was beheaded in the Nigerian state of Borno with her bridesmaids. Can you imagine this? 5 days before her wedding. Then there was a raid in the village of Goragan in the Nigerian state of Kaduna, where terrorists shot anyone they met in the square where the evangelical community had gathered, killing 2 young Christian women. There was also a Christian student killed by Islamic extremists who recorded his execution. Then Pastor Lawan Adimi, a local leader of the Christian Association of Nigeria, was beheaded. Every day, says Father Joseph Fields of the Diocese of Magdura, our brothers and sisters are slaughtered in the streets. Please help us not be silent in the face of this immense extermination that is taking place in silence. The Bishops' Conference of Nigeria described the area as killing fields, like the ones the Khmer Rouge created in Cambodia to exterminate its population. Most of the 4,300 Christians killed for their faith during the last year came from Nigeria. Nina Shea, an expert in religious freedom, recently wrote this: an ongoing Islamic extremist project to exterminate Christians in sub-Saharan Africa is even more brutal and more consequential for the church than in its Middle East, the place where Christians suffered from ISIS genocide. One of the things that we see here is that this project to exterminate Christians is something that's going on all over the world, and it's from Islam. Islam, I told you, is not a religion. It's a civilization takeover. They will do it one of two ways. They'll do it peaceably by trying to infiltrate a country and their laws and pass Sharia law, like they're doing in parts of Detroit right now, or and they're doing in England right now and Europe, or they'll have a jihad, which is a war. And so the first thing they'll exterminate are Jews and Christians. And this is what they're doing in other parts of the world. Let me just read it to you, give you a relative understanding. Unfortunately, the murder of these Christians during the last month has been largely ignored by the Western media. That's American media. It says it's a massacre of Christians, massive in scale and horrific in brutality, and the world has hardly noticed, wrote the French philosopher Bernard-Henri Lévy. While Christians were murdered in Nigeria, the global media ran a story of a pig being tied up and shoved off a bungee tower at a new theme park in China. The story went viral on the BBC, The Independent, the New York Times, Sky News, Deutsche Welle News, and many other mainstream media outlets. The Chinese pig got more media coverage than any of these murdered Christians in Nigeria. Pig bungee jumping stunt in China prompts global outcry, wrote the Huffington Post. Where has been the global outcry for the serial butchering of Christians just because they're Christians? The killing of a gorilla in a Cincinnati zoo committed to save a child's life triggered more emotion and media coverage than the beheading of 21 Christians on a beach in Libya while they invoked the name of Jesus in Arabic and whispered prayers. ABC, CBS, NBC devoted 6 times more coverage to the death of one gorilla than they did to the mass execution of Christians. The world prefers to worry about pandas rather than about us, threatened with extinction in the land where we were born, said Nicodemus Sharaf, the Syrian Orthodox Archbishop of Mosul, as well as a refugee in Erbil, the capital of the Iraqi Kurdistan, home of many of the Christians who fled the jihadis. When the Archbishop said that, it was 4 years ago. It looked as if it was just provocation to shock Western public opinion. But Archbishop Sharaf was right. The French-Lebanese writer Amin Malouf also noted threats to pandas cause more emotion than threats to Christians. In Australia, they take care of frogs. One of our Syriac citizens, who's a builder, bought land, took money from a bank, and wanted to build houses and sell them. Then when he wanted to get a certificate to build, in the middle of the land, he came across a hole with 8 frogs in it. The government of Sydney told him, "You can't build on this land." He said, "But I've taken money from the bank. I must get to work." And they pushed him to build in another place, making him pay $1.4 million to build a different place for these 8 frogs. You know what I would have done? I would have killed the frogs. Anyway, and yet we are the last people who speak Jesus' language. We are Aramaic people. They speak the actual language of Christ. And we don't want to have this right to anyone, and we don't have this right to have anyone protect us. Look upon us as frogs. We'll accept that. Just protect us so we can stay in our land. In an era of round-the-clock information on our mobile phones, television, social media, the abominations suffered by Christians have been left without images, while the brutality against the Chinese pig was streamed all over. Christians are an endangered species. Pigs are not. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature has several categories that define the danger of extinction that various species face today, according to Benedict Kiley, the founder of Nazarene organization, which helps with Christians in the Middle East. Using a percentage of population decline, the categories range from vulnerable species, a 30 to 50% decline in their numbers, to critically endangered, that's an 80 to 90% decline, and finally to extinction. The Christian population of Iraq has shrunk by 83%. Putting it in the category of critically endangered. One of the last Nigerian Christians was executed by an Islamic State child soldier. Slaughterhouses workers go on trial in France for abuses to animals, but the same France has already repatriated more than 250 ISIS fighters, the same people who turn Iraqi churches into slaughterhouses. Western media stirred global indignation about Russia's laws against homosexual propaganda prior to the Winter Olympics in Sochi. But the same Western media never protested Islamic regimes that punish people with the death for converting to Christianity, or countries where Christians are threatened with death if they do not convert to Islam. On Tuesday, January 14th, in a village not far from Buramanga, which for over a year has helplessly witnessed the kidnapping of Father Perlugi Makali, a group of criminals who went to settle the scores with the chief nurse who works in the dispensary in this area took the nephew from his home, and he was beheaded. In Buramanga, people no longer go to church on Sunday. These persecuted Christians feel more and more alone in a world that sees them as intruders. There seems to be no way to push the Western world to become aware of this tragedy that no one talks about, which could have fatal consequences for the future of our civilization. Does the life of Christians from East Africa or Asia count for a negligible amount? This is a question that we have the right to ask when we see that place in our dear media give to the killings and discrimination that Christians are subject to on planet. Nothing or almost nothing. It is our hypocrisy that feeds the clash of civilizations. So Jesus was absolutely right. It's happening right now, another sign of the times. Let me give you a couple other things tonight. This one is something that's kind of interesting. It's demand for prepper properties soars as Americans prepare for uncertain future. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I'm going to tell you this. People are starting to get out of the cities. These are not just Christians. There used to be preppers that were going out of the cities because they're looking for, the final days, Armageddon. But now regular people, if I could put it that way, the secular people are getting out of the cities. Their professionals are leaving cities. What they're doing, and this article says, is they're driving real estate prices down in New York City and some of the cities. Used to be you couldn't touch a house in New York City for under several $1 million. Now I'm talking about something small apartment-wise. Now those are plummeting. And the ones that are going up are in rural areas, specifically Wyoming, Montana, Idaho. People are buying large ranches. They're buying ranches that have water access on them. They're putting their own wells in if they have wells. They're doing something that they're trying to get off the grid. Kanye West just purchased one with his wife, Kim Kardashian, a $4.5 million large ranch in Wyoming. And we're seeing celebrities do it. We're seeing a whole bunch of people do it. This goes on and tells us about how many people are deeply concerned about the upcoming election. And many others are alarmed by the other crazy stuff happening all over the world. But whatever the motivation is, it's undeniable that an increasing number of Americans are seeking to flee to the major cities right now. Matter of fact, one of the hot spots in Wyoming are ex-missile silos from the 1960s. They're using them as houses, and they're underground. I'm not sure how smart that is, but one of them goes for $4.5 million. So that's got to be A pretty nice missile silo. Anyway, people are fleeing there. They're trying to get off the grid. Despite the remoteness of these homes, they're not backwoods shacks with sagging metal roofs. Some of the listings sell for more than $1 million plus if there's a lot of land or if water rights are included. Over in Idaho, real estate agent Todd Savage also noticed a huge surge in interest prepper properties. He told Realtor.com that his sales are up 50% just in rural properties. As we approach the 2020 election, demand is going to continue to surge and prices are only going to get higher. People are scared. They're wondering what's going on. And if great chaos breaks out during the aftermath of the election, how will that happen? Well, if, God forbid, a Democrat is elected, you heard me right, it's going out all over the place. If, God forbid, then your Second Amendment right's going to go out the window. And whether you have a gun or you don't have a gun, they're going to take them away. They're already trying to do it in Virginia. In Virginia, the governor has actually ordered the troopers to come in. He ordered the National Guard to come in to disarm some people who are going against his laws and take their guns away. And what they said, the National Guard said, we're not going to do that. It's against the Constitution. So you will see this rift in America split right down the middle if that happens, and you may see a civil war. It's really something that needs to be talked about. We are watching the Congress, the Democratic Congress, we're watching them weaponize impeachment. What that means is this, and it's not going to go through, but they're going to impeach whatever way they can. And it's amazing to me, I'm just going to get off on this. Can I do that for a moment? Yes. All right. Adam Schiff is a Jew. Yes. A lot of Democrats are Jewish. So he doesn't back President Trump, who has done more for Israel than anybody ever. So Adam Schiff is really, what he is he's a traitor. Yeah. He's a traitor to his religion, and he's a traitor to America. And let me tell you why he is. Because what he's doing and what the Democrats are doing is unconstitutional. One of the best speeches that came out of this boring thing, and it is tremendously boring. One of the best speeches that came out was from Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is the premier leader and expert in constitutional law. One of the things he did, I think it was on Tuesday, he recorded all the things past presidents have done that were quid pro quo. He said that's not a reason to impeach. He talked about Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln declared war. Only Congress can declare war. For that, he could have been impeached. He wasn't. He talked about George Washington doing certain things. He listed the presidents. And he said it was never in the Founding Fathers' interest to say that you're going to do quid pro quo, because every president does that. Even if Trump did it, it's not impeachable. He says, but I'm not even saying he did. Now, by the way, he is not Republican, and he voted Democrat last time. He voted for Hillary, but he's a constitutional expert. And he also said this. He said Lincoln not only declared war, but when he was going for re-election in Indiana, he ordered General Meade to send all the Indiana boys home so they can vote for him. That is really quid pro quo, but he didn't get impeached. So over and over he detailed this. You know what? They ignored all of that. They just went right past it. The managers of the House, which are all Democrats, continued to pound the same thing. And if you watched any of it, it's very, very biased. You'll see the questions last couple of days. The senators can now ask questions. They have to ascertain whether they want to have more witnesses, which, by the way, if they vote for witnesses, this thing's going to go on for months and months and months. If they vote to dispel the articles of impeachment, it'll end by Tuesday. And so they asked for questions. The questions came up, and of course we had the presiding man over it, the judge, read the questions, some of them that he wanted to read. He read the questions, and basically you could see where they came from. They would be pointed towards the managers, which is the House of Representatives, which are all Democrats that are there, and it would always be favorable for them. Or if you got one from the Senate that came for the White House counsel, it would always be for them. It's continually split. They are not doing this in a way that is looking for any truth. It is they are weaponizing impeachment. So here's what's going to happen. If this continues on like this, and he's not going to get impeached, but if it continues on, you're going to see this happen to every single president. Every single president is going to go up to impeachment. Matter of fact, if and when Trump wins the 2020 election, he's going to be impeached again. They're not going to stop it. And what they've done is they've cheapened the impeachment process. That was supposed to be something only for really high crimes. All kinds of things were eliminated from that, and there's no crime here. So we're watching something get really, really bad. And again, that 2020 election is going to be a watershed mark for America. So people are panicking. All kinds of people. They're looking at things that are happening. In the event that things things really start to fall apart, people want their families to be safe. And safety is not going to be found in major cities. It says economic conditions are deteriorating. Global weather patterns are going completely nuts. I just showed you that. Let me remind you, this is a secular article. Listen to what they're saying. It almost sounds like Matthew 24. Economic conditions are deteriorating. Global weather patterns are going completely nuts. War could break out in the Middle East. Jesus said there will be wars and rumors of wars at any time. Civil unrest is on the rise all over the globe. A mysterious coronavirus is spreading very rapidly in Asia. Our planet is becoming increasingly unstable. Paul said we're in labor pains in the last days. And the 2020 election looks like it could be a flashpoint for all the anger that has been boiling just under the surface in our nation for many years. It says if you want to grab a pepper property, now is the time to do so, because the time is running out and things are about to start getting really crazy out there. A secular article. So am I worried? Are you worried? No, you don't have to be worried. You have a security in Christ. Somebody say amen. So, but we need to be informed, because that's exactly what's happening. So next time you're at the grocery store and you're standing in line and everybody's looking at the rag magazines, and some lady says to you, or a man says to you, I don't know what's going on in the world. You do. So tell them, this is what's going on, but we have a haven. Come on, somebody say amen. All right, that's pretty heavy duty in the news, so I'm going to give you a little weird news. Is that all right? Nothing to do with prophecy. There she is. Indian Rapunzel remains a cut above with the world's longest teen hair. A 17-year-old Indian girl has retained her crown as the teen with the world's longest hair, more than a decade after she stopped getting her hair tresses cut following a bad experience at a salon. Sorry, Dina. Nilashi Patel from the small town of Odessa in India remains a cut above the rest. I guess that's a pun. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, her hair reached a length of 6 feet. Her proud father said his only child's locks had turned her from a local celebrity into an international one. Nicknamed Rapunzel by her friends and schoolmates after the long flowing hair of the fairy tale, Patel said she's not visited a hairdresser for 11 years after a hair-raising experience. Patel has not visited her hairdresser for 11 years. At 6 years old, I had a very bad experience at a local salon, she told the Associated Press. I haven't had my hair cut since. Patel has to wear high-heeled shoes to try to minimize how much of her hair touches the ground when she walks. Apart from that, Patel said she cares for her hair like every other teenager, but with the help from her mother. I do what every teenager does. I wash my hair every week and oil it once or twice a week. I don't know any teenager that oils their hair. The aspiring engineer said, adding that she dries it by sitting in the sun with a hair dryer. Mostly I keep a braid in it, but while playing or for some occasions, I tie my hair into a bun. The only time I have trouble is when swimming, because it wraps around her body and makes her sink and she can't swim. So why tell you all this? Well, because I've decided that in spite of all the care and trouble swimming, I've decided to go for the record. So as of today, I'm never going to cut my hair again. Wait till you see me in 10 years. I'm going to take every piece of hair and glue it to each other so it's at least 10 feet long. That's in the news for tonight. I'm going to ask the ushers as they come forward.